And thank you very much for your time for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. We have some special guests here on the call, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce them. We have Surendra and Salil from the Wireless Escalation Business Entity. Good day. How are you guys doing? Thanks for joining.
Hey Dan, doing good. Thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, thanks. And then we also have Clark, who is joining us from the Identity Services Engine escalation team in the business unit as well. Welcome, Clark. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. All right, so during today's session, before we get rolling here, we are recording the session, so it will be available later on for your viewing. We will send a follow-up email with the presentation, so if you are looking for a copy of the presentation after the fact, we'll send that out via email to you if you registered and attended the session live here. And we are also running a duplicate session later in June as well, June 22nd, I believe, at the same time. So that is a repeat. So you don't need to join that one if you've joined this one or if you've watched this recording, but it is another option to join and ask questions there. And speaking of questions, we have several people here on the panels, on the panel list panel for addressing your questions. And we will do that through the WebEx Q&A panel. So you'll see that on the right-hand side of your WebEx window. If you have any questions during the session, you can submit those and we'll have someone address those questions there live. So thank you. With that, I will turn it over to Surendra. Take it away.
Hey, Dan, thanks so much. Thanks so much for the introduction. So team, what we will cover now is a couple of items, right? So the agenda is we'll talk about the release recommendations for wireless and we go to ISE best practices where we talk about the recommendations, some of the things that we have to look into before deploying any of the network. And then we go back to the wireless where based on the release recommendations, if there is any upgrades and downgrades that we have to do, how do we prepare the upgrade, right? So what are the things to look out for, some of the gotchas, some of the known issues, and how to get around the known problem that we have. And then we know that most of our customers are deploying Wi-Fi 6E, and we want to come up with some of the recommendations for that. So the agenda here is also to kind of cover some of the best practices there, and we do cover some of the WLC best practices. So what is the best way to deploy 9800s into the network with all the best practices incorporated, and a short section of tools and support. So tools, some of the wireless troubleshooting tools that we have, which can be used on a day-to-day basis for you guys to automate some of the log collections and how to look into the data, right? So that's more or less the agenda of what we have. With that, let's get into the release recommendations, right? So good thing, amazing thing, okay? So last year, I know we confused you guys a lot by providing 17.3, 17.6, 17.9, right? So this time we've come back to you guys with one single release for your deployment. Let it be EDU, let it be enterprise, let it be healthcare, let it be whatever the customer vertical it is, it doesn't matter. All the hardenings are done, all the bug fixes are in one single release. So what we recommend every customer to be on is 17.9x, and what that X is, 17.9.3 right now, and in the month of July or early July, 17.9.4 will get released. So more or less what we're recommending each and every customer is to bank on 17.9 release for a couple of reasons, right? So one, it's one single release which supports multi-generation of access points, which is wave 1, wave 2, IoT APs, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E APs, right? So you ask for it and we are delivering this for you guys, one. The second, every single software defect that we've identified in 17.3, 17.6, all those things are fixed in 17.9, and some of the best hardening efforts have gone through in this release. So it's one of the releases that we recommend. And any issues that we're facing on top of CCO, we're trying to come up with the SMU and the APSP. So SMU and APSP are no longer the sales pitch, rather it's happening as we speak. So we're releasing it on CCO and for the customers, right? So for the latest and the greatest, always look into this release notes. Just click on this link, you will be able to find what is the latest recommendation, some of the gotchas, some of the issues that we have, and what is the recommendation and how to mitigate it. Okay? So just a quick snippet of our compatibility matrix. I know it's easy for me to tell you guys, oh, you know what, go to 79X, but we do have the solution along with us, right? So for that, if you have the APs, if you have the IRCM90 controllers, or if you have Gen 2 IRCM controllers, or DNAC, Prime, CMX, or Cisco Spaces, or ISE, right? So this is the one-stop shop recommendation compatibility metrics for you guys, and also to get the latest and the greatest, there are a couple of links that we've shared on this slide. Slides will be shared with you guys. Click on it, you'll get the latest and the greatest. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Clark to cover ISE best practices.
Thanks a lot, Surendra. I appreciate you guys moving this around. I'm a parent at home at this today as well. So I did want to start off talking about currently the release, and you can build up the slide. Salil, is currently 3.1. Now moving forward, and if you'll advance that, yep, we're going to move 3.2 to be the recommended release. It may come within a month. It may come. Currently, we're on patch 2. It may come on patch 2 or patch 3. And the reason I bring that up is we always want you to be on newer versions, because we'll talk about some end-of-life stuff in just a moment. But there's some features in 3.2. It's not a shameless plug for me, but I do enjoy using them because I can troubleshoot better on the box with things like log analytics. And these are things that aren't in 3.1, but I'm sure many of you use things like Splunk and other type of log systems to be able to graphically analyze the systems. But starting at 3.2, we have that built into the system. So I certainly would recommend that. 3.1, 3.2, they're pretty close to the same. For me, I don't see, one having any more issues than the other. They're pretty tight as far as code is concerned. It just 3.2 has the features I'm looking for. You can go to the next slide. Oh, as you guys are probably upgrading over the summer break, don't forget to upgrade your hardware. If you have the SNS appliance like the 3600, there are some vulnerabilities and such that are fixed in there. It is a multi-step process for this. It's not just using the HUU to put it all on. You actually have to use the HUU to put on part of this. But because there's a secure boot feature in the SNS appliance, you'll have to do the BIOS upgrade separately. Basically, it has to be signed for you to be able to update it. So, and you can continue. Shipping hardware. So we are now shipping all of the hardware, the 3715, 55, and 95. They are more powerful systems than their predecessors. In fact, the 3715, if it just had more memory, would be on par with the older 36, 55, and 95. Support begins in 3.1 patch 6. So 3.2 is supported on this. We've added the ability, instead of just the standard spinning disk, you can add solid state drives or the self-encrypting drives to give you increased performance and security. As always, if you're using a virtual machine, please mimic the like shipping hardware. So if you're spinning up new stuff going forward, you should probably be looking at the specifications for the 3700 series, and there's a link there so you can see the data sheet. Will, yeah, thanks. In-a-lot announcements. So there's a link to the site. You'd be surprised how many people still have that call in with questions on 2.2, which has been going for quite some time. So please don't be that that phone call. 2.7, its end of software maintenance is going to be very soon here in September. It's already, we're already only patching for Sev 1s. All of that will end in September. So if you're on 2.7, it's time to get off of that. Likewise, 3.0, it's software maintenance. Basically, coming in July, we will start only patching severity 1 and vulnerabilities. And then a year later, we'll end all of software maintenance for that. The 3600 series appliance has also reached an end of sale end of life notice. And the last point to buy those, if you still want to buy the 3600 series, will be in the middle of August there. As far as upgrading, just a couple things to look out for if you do this. The first one is be careful with rollbacks, and then I'll talk about a couple things here with rollbacks. One is we respun the image for 3.1, so there were some issues in the beginning of 3.1 that we worked through, but we added a feature later for zero-touch provisioning if you're in virtual machine. So you can kind of set a script to spin up a node. We respun the image about almost a year after the first release of 3.1. If you're on the non-respun version, so if your installation file is the one that was, from 2021, I think November timeframe, be careful about rolling back patches. So I know you guys will move forward with patches on some of these. 3.1 patch 6 is a great patch. If you're encountering an issue, let's work through it. Be very careful about rolling back patch 6 on this, because what can happen is a couple of files will get missing and it will fail to initialize. So your rollback could cause your system to be dead in the water, and we certainly don't want that. So if you are on the respun version, easiest way to tell that is looking at a show tech file. It'll say ZTP bundle at the top of the show tech file. If you see that, then you're on the respun version. If you don't, then you're on the original. If you're on the original and you roll back, you're going to encounter this problem. If you're on the newer respun version, you won't have this issue. But if you're going to do it, probably best just to call TAC before rolling back, just to ensure that whether or not you're going to encounter an issue here, and they can take care of things if you do. The bug ID was there. And then before I get to this particular one right here, adding on, the same thing applies. I just had a customer the other day patch to, I think they went to 3.1 patch 6, but they were on a good version, not a problem where maybe it was 3.0. But prior to doing that, they had a hot patch installed. And those are common for us to have hot patches. The issue is you basically have two choices. Either roll back the hot patch prior to moving forward with the official patch, or if you don't do that and you move forward with the official patch, don't ever roll back the hot patch that's on there. You know, the problem is if you do, it stored a backup copy of the original files that it replaced. So let's say you go from 3.0 patch 3 to 3.0 patch 7, but you had a hotfix in the middle. Once you got to patch 7, if you rolled back, it wouldn't be putting back patch 3 files anymore. It would roll back, it wouldn't put back the patch 7 files anymore. It would put back the old patch 3, and that would cause you a problem. So, and this last bug right here, in 3.1 patch 5, we introduced some more security checks about the key usage and extended key usage inside certificates, as far as things like, I think it applies everywhere, but where this could affect you is if you're using eTLS. So the templates that you use to generate your certificates for your clients to use as credentials, we are now checking the key usage and extended key usage. So if those are not set correctly, then your eTLS will just stop working. ISE will throw an error that your certificate's not good. If you've already went to 3.1 patch 5 and you're not seeing any issue, then you're good. Your certificate templates were okay, and it's not going to be a problem for you. But as with anything, before we make a big leap like that, let's take one node and either take it out of service or do this in the lab and make a test and ensure that your clients are still working before you move this forward. Because once you move forward, it's very difficult to come back in some situations. And I think that's all I had in there.
Hey, Clark.
Yeah.
2 questions quick before we move on
Sure.
here. There's, I think these are both directed towards you. Hopefully here you can address these. Does
Yep.
the latest release on Cisco downloads only offer the respun installation file?
It does. Yeah, we pulled the old one off. So
Okay,
if
good.
basically since November of last year, if you pulled it down, you've got the respawn. May
Okay,
have
good.
in August. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then when is 3.1 patch 7 scheduled for release? Do you know on that one?
I can quickly look. If you can give me just a
We can come back to that too.
super fast second. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We can come back to that. That's
Yeah,
fine.
we'll come back to it. It's a question we can address here as we move on, but we will address that one. So, all right. Thanks, Clark.
You're very welcome. Thank you, guys.
All right. Okay. Now we've wrapped up the ISE. We'll talk about the controller. We have quite a bit of slides. So we'll talk through what do you need to do before you upgrade the controllers. And some of these are our learnings that we have found as some of the customers have upgraded from 17.3, 17.6 to 17.9. So we just wanted to be very candidly give this information to you guys, so when you anticipate an upgrade, you are aware of these caveats and you can take proactive actions. So first of all, compared to any other previous releases, there is a requirement to upgrade your WLC ROM on. So if you were the first ones to buy 9800s, more likely you would need to upgrade the ROM on. Why do we need to do that? Primarily is to support booting up larger image files. And there are some critical fixes that are coming up from the ROM on itself. You don't need to break HA. There are instructions in the link that we have put how to upgrade the ROM on while you are on HA. So just make sure you don't break HA to do that. Well, if you do upgrade without going through the ROM on upgrade, there might be chances the box might not boot up. So that's the caveat that we wanted to let you guys aware. It's listed in the release notes, but sometimes we forget to review each line, but we wanted to point that out today. Second important is look at the release notes. I've given the link of the release notes here. There's a specific path for the upgrade. If you are, let's say, having 9130 access points specifically, and if you are something before 17.3.4, those upgrades will definitely fail. So make sure you follow the upgrade path while you're upgrading from your previous releases. Also, there are some customers who tend to do ISSU upgrade. It's a great feature, but there's a caveat towards it. As we deprecate some of the CLIs in the later versions of port, we have to make sure that while you upgrade, you remove those commands. So we have listed that out in the release notes, and the URL is also there. So you can review those, make sure in your configuration, those commands are not there prior initiating an ISSU upgrade if you end up doing an ISSU upgrade. The third one is, this is something that we recently found internally in our labs, but we started seeing some customers who upgraded. So people who had controllers running for, let's say, several months, what ended up happening was the AP's temp folder, which is used to download the image from the controller, was full and it was not getting cleaned out. So what ended up happening was your pre-downloads would fail, your upgrades would fail, and the AP would continuously go in that pre-download loop. The only way to remove that loop was to actually go into individual switches and power cycle the switches, ports off the switches. If you don't want to run into this situation, you can simply just use a single CLI on the controller to reboot the access points before you initiate the controller upgrade. Of course, this is fixed in 17.9.3, so any future upgrades, you don't have to go through this whole process again. This is one important one. AP image corruption may not be necessarily impacting the SLED teams, but if you do have APs across a WAN link, maybe small sites, make sure you follow this link or the article that talks about if your APs may be impacted where the AP does not boot with an image because the AP downloads a corrupted image over a WAN link. What I would suggest is this will not impact your LAN networks. Most deployments, this should not be worried about. This is a small corner case where your MTU between the AP and the controller is, let's say, 1000 MTU, or you are going over a WAN link that is drop each, from a delay perspective, drop perspective. So I expect your APs may run into this problem. Keep that in mind. 17.9.3 has these fixes, so your future upgrades are protected, so you don't need to go through this whole loop. These were our primarily the pre-checks before you upgrade, so that you don't run into a Sev1 kind of a situation. The next chapter, what we're talking about is on the Wi-Fi 6E. This is an important topic as you transition to 17.9, as you start incorporating newer access points in your environment. We thought to put out these recommendations on what we think today are best practices. Obviously, in the next 6 months, things may change. We may learn different things. New clients may pop out, so the best practices may slightly deviate, but this is what we've been doing so far. So the first one is the SSID. So there are various ways you can do SSID configuration. The first one is obviously like all in, right? You reconfigure your existing WLAN to WPA3 as WPA3 is mandated for 6 gigahertz. What it means is your existing clients may or may not work. So most likely, unlikely, you will proceed with this first option. The second option is like one SSID option, right? You configure multiple WLANs with the same SSID name, but different security settings. I think this is the one that is probably most conservative in terms of adopting to the new clients, but at the same time, making sure your existing clients continue to work. And the third option is basically multiple SSIDs, where you configure a specific SSID for 5, specific SSID for 6 gigahertz. There are some customers trying to do that works out for them, but there are some probably don't want to reconfigure their clients for different profiles. We're going to talk more about what we will recommend for 17.9 and what we will recommend for 17.12. So for 17.9, what you have is you could create a single SSID eduroam, but you can create multiple policy profiles. With that, your clients will still be able to see the same eduroam SSID, but there will be 2 different security profiles tied to it. The only downside for this is if you have a client that is 6 gigahertz capable and it roams from 2.45 to 6 gigahertz or 6 gigahertz back to 2.45, that roaming will be a full authentication. That's the only downside that I see. With 17.12, we are supporting that configuration for roaming. Though 17.12 we are not recommending for this school year. The 17.12 recommendation will come back next year. So we want to make sure that we give you a snippet of what it looks like from a 17.12 perspective. The next important one is the channel plans, the clients, what should I be doing? The RF profiles is where your channel width and what channels you can pick is assigned. Our recommendation for 6 gigahertz is to stick with 80 megahertz because primarily if you look into the penetration of the transmit power from 20 megahertz to 40 megahertz to 80 megahertz, in 6 gigahertz it's increasing, right? So in Europe, because of the limited set of channels available, we are suggesting to go with 40 megahertz. What we have also noticed is from a controller RRM perspective, we are giving a PSC bias. PSC is a preferred scan channel for the clients. And what we have seen is clients prefer to scan these channels over other channels. So our recommendation is to enforce the PSC unless you feel you need to not use the PSC enforcement if you're looking at for more channel plans. There's no changes that we want to suggest from an existing your RF profiles for 2.4 or 5. From client vendors perspective, Cisco has a good partnership on a weekly basis with various client vendors, be it Intel, be it Apple, be it Samsung, be it Zebra, and other clients. So both the teams are actively working to improve their logics, their algorithms. So I'll make sure your drivers are the latest. There's one caveat, what I've noticed consistently, a lot of laptops that are shipped from Dell, Lenovo, you might need to do the BIOS upgrades to enable the 6 gigahertz. A lot of these, if they have sold a little bit, maybe a year or year and a half down the road, even though they have 6 gigahertz client adapters, they are probably not going to scan 6 gigahertz. So make sure you do that. Sticking back a little bit on switching from the 6 gigahertz recommendations perspective to WLC best practices, we thought to basically go past the last 2 years of learnings and give you a little bit of, hey, what do I need to do? What things have changed from previous releases to 17.9.3? So to give a little bit of a refresher, you guys were all probably aware of WNCDs. I think everyone is. If you don't, let's take about an example. If you today don't create site tags, then if you are using default site tags, that means that all your access points will be evenly distributed across the WNCDs. This is not our recommendation to go with default site tags. We would require or request you to have custom or name site tags that gives all APs within a building or a floor going through one WNCD. This is important, and I think I wanted to make sure that you design the site tags based on the client load. So a site having more clients, more roaming activity versus a site that is probably like few clients, you would probably want to weigh the clients that are having more roaming activities or higher density situations. With this in mind, we had a certain challenge in the past, like how do I design what site tags, how many APs I need to distribute across between site tags. And it was a mental math, a lot of times we went wrong. So we came up with two things in 17.9.3. One was an enhanced site tag based load balancing, gives you an ability to define a load. So it remains configured on the controller, and the controller understands now which sites are more heavier than the other sites, and it will give you a preferential treatment in terms of how it load balances the clients and the APs. The second one was there was a lot of ISE accounting updates causing ISE to melt down, or it required ISE to scale higher from your compute perspective as the clients increased, as the client roaming increased. So we came up with two options for 17.9.3. The first one was the enhanced site tag based load balancing. This enhanced site tag load balancing allows you to configure a site load, thus allowing your system to take better load balancing decisions. So for example, how do you define a load? So sites with normal client density and roaming load, you can probably consider similar to an AP count. This might be like your cubicle spaces or office spaces, or maybe even hospitals where there is not much movement of mass gatherings, not much movement of clients attaching on a single access point or set of access points. But when you talk about, let's say, sites with high client density, this would be your big auditoriums or big classrooms, or areas where people would roam aggressively between one classroom to another. This would become a high client load kind of a situation. So you might want to give a client load factor of 300 or 400. There's more things We will add a URL for you to read and come back, but this is one of the important learnings that we took from 17.3 and put it out there in 17.6 to facilitate ease of load balancing the WNCDs. The next one is interim accounting. This is where you were getting unneeded accounting updates when clients roamed from one access point to another that just caused ISE to melt down from an authentication perspective. So there is a CLI knob today available. Default is it's not enabled. So in the sense the interim accounting will go through. So if you do need to change, you can use these CLIs or the web UI to make those changes. So you will see now the accounting updates are reduced dramatically than what you've seen in the past from your previous releases. There is one caveat: if you are relying on radius profiling, make sure that you really are using it or not. If you are using or you need it, then turning this off will make it not work. This is something we put together in the next few slides. A lot of tag cases we get, and one of the important tag case was, hey, my iOS APs just stopped connecting back on the controller. We didn't do anything about it, right? What you realize is, over a period of time, if you're maintaining these access points, their certs will expire, depending upon what time you bought these access points. So the lifetime of these certificates are 10 years. So as a safeguard, if you have these access points and you don't know when they will expire, it might be worth to actually configure these commands to bypass that cert validation. This is a huge tag case generator for us at Cisco, so thought to bring this up to you. This is another one, session and idle timeout. I've seen a lot of people change these values. Sometimes session timeouts are 30 minutes, people keep 5 minutes. I would strongly recommend to keep these defaults, the session timeout to 24 hours or at least 8 hours. The idle timeout, I would recommend you to keep 300 seconds, primarily because you don't want to keep an hour long, because if you keep that hour long, the controller and the access point will maintain the client in its database. So for example, if you flip your laptop and then you turn that back on, more likely the client will go through the full authentication again, then try to get onboarded with this idle timeout. These defaults for session timeout, we are also making changes in 17.14 or 17.13 onwards to make it as 8 hours recommended. So this is another instance where a lot of people actually respond back, I have a very slow web UI, right? What you would need to remember is the web UI on the 9800s relies on VTY lines for processing this HTTP request. And at times when multiple people are connected onto the web UI, or you have multiple SSH sessions going on, it is possible that you might exhaust the default VTY lines. So I highly encourage you to extend these VTY from 5 to 50 lines. And also, as a best practice, to keep the sessions alive, the TCP keep alive and in and out to track the TCP sessions. This is one other best practice, 802.11 data rates. This is very important, where a lot of people keep the lowest rate as supported, but then let's say 6 megabits per second, they keep it as supported, but 12 megabits per second is mandatory. You really don't want to do these kind of combinations. Your first rate has to be mandatory so the clients can see that, and when they go on the edge of the cells, they are able to still maintain that connectivity. Similarly, in the 5 gigahertz range, I prefer to keep 12 megabits mandatory and rest of them as supported. A lot of times you end up trying to turn off 12 meg or 18 meg, but keep 24 meg mandatory, unless you know you have really good experience from a high density perspective. I would discourage to do that. We have had a lot of discussions with Apple and Intel, what are the best rates they like to see, and this is one of them they suggested to us as well. Similarly, on the 2.4, if you have good coverage, you don't have those beacon lines, turn that 11 Mbps off, keep the 12 Mbps mandatory. The next one is radius server timeouts and probes. This is a classic case where you think you have designed a network with the most amount of radius servers you have out there. You have paid redundant controllers, HA failover, but yet when one radius fails over, you say, hey, I had the whole network meltdown. Few things we've seen, the radius server dead criteria or the dead times are not set correctly. I highly encourage to configure these if you haven't configured. The second important one is the automate tester. This is especially useful for the controller to probe the server first to find out if the server is alive. If you don't have this configured, what ends up happening is your client traffic will be forwarded onto the server only to realize that the server is still not accessible and it will mark dead. So this is a graceful way for the controller to know if the server is active or alive. The next one is DCA leader and RF group names. I think this is an interesting one. I think 10 years back, we had those low-end controllers with 4400. If you have been using them, they could support as low as 25 access points to 100 access points. And over a period of time, we built 55 OIDs that scaled up to 500 access points. The challenge there was our buildings most oftentimes had more number of access points than our controllers could support. But today, that's not the case. Today, we have 2000 and 6000 AP support. I would recommend, at least if you're using these 9840s and 9880s, to elect itself as an RRM leader. This is to protect some other controller in different part of the network, being a leader if one of your controller goes down, and re-electing the RRM calculations again. Obviously, don't change RF group names across your controllers. If you do change, it will become as a rogues. So that's the caveat that you want to make sure you follow. This is a part of the section we talked about the WNCD and how do you protect the control plane on the controller. Like other devices, you protect the control plane. I thought to bring in from a controller perspective, how do you do that? And what are some of the things that we learned and what we can give you as insights in this session. So the first one is the probe limit. As you know, the Wi-Fi probes are seen by the access point. The access point forwards these probes to the controller, and then the controller has to process them. These are all control frames. Lot of times, if you're not using CMX, Cisco spaces, location calculations, you might just not want that data coming back to the controller. And it might just ease off that control plane processing on the controller for these probe floods or probes that come out. People when roam, you see these probes coming high. So this is a command that we would recommend if you are not doing any location-based system to enable on the controller to protect. The next is, this is MDNS Apple continuity. Few years back, this got added, and it is so chatty that you can literally have so many MDNS requests and response go out every minute or every second. What we are stating is, if you do need this feature, you would need to tie this in the next slide. I'll talk about how to do MDNS location based. But if you don't need this feature, I strongly encourage you to turn this off. This is our recommendation on the MDNS. By default, when MDNS Gateway is enabled, you're using the default MDNS profiles. It basically learns everything from everywhere, broadcasts everything from everywhere. And this actually causes an exponential rise in MDNS entries being cached on the controller. The amount of queries that it has to process is humongous, and it does impact the WNCD. So our suggestion is, if you use any of this MDNS gateway, enable location-based MDNS. This is to basically make sure the MDNS requests and responses are processed based on the location, based on the area or the proximity, and anything else will get dropped. This is an interesting topic on 11K. There are a lot of cases you might have heard from TAC, hey, turn off 11K. It will help solve your scaling problem on the controller. There's a caveat towards it. If you are running stadiums, public arenas, we strongly encourage you to not enable this, primarily when you are in stadiums or when you are in big auditoriums. Mostly the clients just continuously are in search. They will be continuously sending these 11K events. But what we have seen deploying stadiums and in Cisco Live as well, that relying on traditional RSSI based is going to be just good enough for these clients to pick the right APs. And it will also protect your controller from a control plane perspective from processing these 11K frames. The next is SNMP. This is again a high amount of tag cases we get. Hey, my SNMP process on the controller is really high. What do I do? There is an option. You can enable this CLI and have some comfort in terms of how the controller caches and responds. But oftentimes I would suggest if you're polling these client or AP related MIPS, maybe every 30 seconds or every 60 seconds, you might want to drop down to maybe every 5 minutes or 15 minutes. That will really help calm down the SNMP itself. This is, I'd probably be the last one from a best practice perspective. This is more not to the controller, but this will impact the DNAC, especially if you have situations where there are a lot of rogues and you might want to keep the rogue RSSI threshold to be -75 or maybe -80. The defaults are really tracking all the rogues, even like very far away. There is one important one that we've seen DNAC getting clogged. If the RSSI deviation of these rogues is default, which is 1 dBm, then every 180 seconds there will be a rogue update going out to the DNAC. And that has caused DNAC in the past. If you really have like thousands of rogues seen, it might just help off calm down if the deviation is set to 10. So when 10 is set, it will be like, hey, only if the rogue RSSI deviation deviates beyond 10 dB, then send an update back to the DNAC. We are trying to do few things. We try to put these in our best practices guide as much possible. We look at every 3 months to 6 months time frame to update the guides. So sometimes it will be good for you guys to review this, look at how things are on your controller. That will help you a lot. The second, I would say, look for the SMOOs that we post on CCO or the APSPs. Many times, if it's a critical SMOO or an APSP, we do post it on CCO so that all the customers can download. There are obviously some SMOOs available through TAC, but the ones that are available on CCO, we generally would like you guys to look at it, review it, and probably install them. And that's about it. I will have the next section, which is tools and support. I'll ask Surendra to cover them for me.
Thanks so much, Salil. A couple of things, guys, before we go to tools and support. So the previous section is not to scare you guys with a lot of information. Oh, we have this issue, we have that issue. It's not that purpose. The purpose of that is to make sure that we make you guys aware of what are the things that we've worked till now, so that we don't repeat the same things going forward, right? So there's a lot of efforts that we've put in to make sure we resolve all these issues, and we don't want any of you guys to hit any of the known problems. Rather, just go with the flow on the releases that has the fixes. And
Surendra, real quick, I just want to take a moment to thank you and Salil and Clark and your teams, because everyone on here, I just want to, you guys have a thankless job a lot of times. So you guys have reached out proactively looking to help cut off these things at the pass. And we really appreciate that. I mean, will everything be perfect always? No, but as we can cut off a lot of these issues, like proactively, like you mentioned, Surendra, that's really the goal of the call here is, try and give all of our customers a heads up on what we're seeing, some of the best practices, some of those gotchas, and recommended code releases, and making sure that the networks are ready the best that they can be for when the students return here to campus in the fall with all their shiny new devices. And that's really the goal. Kudos to you and your teams for the partnership in reaching out proactively to make these sessions happen. So thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but just wanted to thank
No
you.
problem. Yeah, so just on the escalation process. So whenever you guys are opening a tag case, so we really want to give the best experience to you, right? So whenever there is an escalation or the tag case open, just make sure that you have all the right data collected. Some of the tools on the next slide will talk about what needs to be done, how we can collect the data. But once we have the data, if things are not moving, then as a customer, you set the priority of your tag case, right? So we do not push back or request for you guys to downgrade the severity or the priority. So we acknowledge and we want to listen and work with you guys. So set the priority, SEV 1, SEV 2, SEV 3, SEV 4. So SEV 1 is most of the time it's complete network down. SEV 2 is somewhat not complete network down, rather your operations is down. And SEV 3 is where you want to know something and you can wait for the root cause to be given in the next 5 days or the next 5 business days. SEV 4 is more or less what I want to know, right? So what I want to know, or I have this question, I have that question, kind of a thing. So just take a call. You can just take SEV 1, you can pick SEV 1, SEV 2, whatever it is, but we are here to help you guys to make sure things are taken care for you, right? And if things are not progressing, okay, you open up a TAC case and there is no response from the TAC engineer, and you're just waiting and you're getting pressurized from your management to root cause some of the issues, right? So what do we do? So yeah, I mean, ensure you have the TAC escalation team involved or the TAC team lead involved. So you request for it. It's up to you. You can just ask, can I get the stack lead on call? By the way, I do that every time. Whenever I don't get even if I go to the restaurant, if the food is not coming on time, I'm like, who's the manager here, right? So the same way. So you just ask for the TAC escalation lead or the TAC manager, and if things are still not moving, there is something called TAC duty manager. So that person is responsible to make sure you get the right assistance at the right time. And he will involve the right teams from engineering, from TAC management, everyone, right? And if things are still not moving, then the best is to talk to your Cisco SC or the accounts managers or the sales engineering team. Most of the time what I do is, okay, I go to Dan, okay? I go to Dan, I go to Ian, I go to many of the folks who are on this call. So just go reach out to your accounts team, and they know whom to contact to in the backend. So they know, they talk to Dan, and Dan and his team talks to us, and we make sure the right resources are involved.
Yeah, thank you, Surendra. I just wanted to, real quick on that slide, there's a lot of important slides in the deck here, but just wanted to stress again, don't be shy here. If things are not progressing, reach out to us, follow this process if you can, but by all means, reach out to us at Cisco if you need any assistance. But I was surprised, I continue to be surprised how many customers don't know that they can ask for a duty manager or ask to escalate their case or set the priority of their case. And I think this is critical and important that you know that, and be your own advocate to help yourself make sure that your case is getting the attention it deserves. Thanks.
Cool. Some of the tools. Just a funny story, right? So we made this slide beginning with all the big links. And we then realized that it will be difficult for you guys to go click on it. Rather, we came up with this new concept. So you will get the PDF format after this session, the attendees, and just scan it, and you will be redirected to some of the cool tools that we have. So Log Advisor is actually integrated on the 9800 graphical user interface. So you go to graphical user interface 9800, click on troubleshooting. There you go. You get a link. You know what logs to collect. So that is the walk me link that we have. So you just click on it, it will take you to the link or a web page on cisco.com, wherein if you have a specific problem to troubleshoot, maybe a client connectivity, AP join, you will be able to, the tool will let you know what logs to collect. So if you collect the data and open the tag case, I'm gonna bet my last pie, you're gonna get the root cause in a day or two, right? Similarly, logs and debugs from the WLC. This is one of the good documents that we've written on cisco.com, which talks about what are the different logs that you can capture, what are the debugs that you can capture, and even how to read that and understand it, right? And some of the other document, which is understanding wireless debug. So previous document talks about what to collect and what are the different logs. The next document talks about how to understand the debugging. The next is the wireless troubleshooting tool. So this is completely owned by my team. So we've written some very good, cool tools for troubleshooting wireless LAN controllers and the wireless in general. For a few of the examples, Config Analyzer Express, it's from one of my team members by name Javier. So that tool is there maybe more than 10 years, right? So and if you have taken the OTA over there captures, you have something called Wi-Fi Hawk. So you just load the OTA on that. Wi-Fi Hawk will give you what is the root cause of the problem, or to analyze and give you the data in the human readable format. So there are a bunch of wireless tools that you can go and start using. And next is the wireless debug analyzer. So now, okay, we're telling what logs to collect, how to collect logs and all those things. Okay, what do we do with that logs? So we have some automation and a tool written wherein you take the logs, upload it to the tool, it will tell you what is the problem. So that's what this wireless debug analyzer does. So we've created this slide, bunch of tools. You can use it. If there is any feedback that you guys have, what's working, what's not working, just feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you guys. With that, thanks so much.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Surendra. Thank you, Salil. Thank you, Clark. And most importantly, thank you everyone for attending here. We do have a couple more minutes. If you do have any questions that you would like to pose, you can go into the Q&A panel in the right-hand pane of WebEx. Also, when we do close this out, you will see a survey that pops up. So I would ask you to just take a moment to fill out that brief survey and give us feedback on these, how we can improve these in the future, because we've continued to improve these calls each year as we go on, now extending these to our customers, and we'll have another session here, like I mentioned, June 22nd at the same time. So we'd like to take any feedback you have and implement that to make these the best sessions that they can be for you. So all right, with that, I don't see any other questions, so we will wrap it up here. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Oh, wait, there is the last question. Let's see here.
The lucky one.
Okay,
Yes.
would LSS be preferred over site tag for MDNS if I'm using site tags on a per billing basis?
Yes, it is still preferred to use LSS over the site tag. Yes.
All right, thanks. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? All right, going once, going twice. All right, now I don't see any more questions. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it, and hope you have a good summer of upgrades. And don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. Your Cisco account team always knows how to get a hold of us. And take care. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.